people don't understand. This trade machine is to get conversations going. I know you liked it internally. In your heart, you
No,
love that trade.
didn't. No. And you can't tell me that I have to like the trade and then say, oh, it's just a conversation starter. I wanted no part of that deal.
Send
In
me a
fact,
rebuttal. Send me a rebuttal.
I
Make
could
this like
say,
fantasy football. Send me your rebuttal trades. A negotiation has to be had. I'm coming to the table. Let me hear what else you got.
this is why I'm the wrong person to have on here because my entire mindset throughout the whole year is, all right, how are the Kings going to get higher in the lottery? What happens if they get X pick? I'm not the trade master of the Kings Herald. If you want to have the trade master on here, you need to have Tim Maxwell on because the only person I think who rivals you for trade chaos is that man. But
I've tried.
it
I've tried. Our schedules never line up, and I also don't think he likes any of my trades either. So I think you guys are in the
you know
same
what?
boat.
Where's he has no stones to throw. Although the only people think that he pisses off with trades are Kings fans. You have the audacity to go out there and tag fans from other fandoms to be like, "Hey, come yell at me about all my trades."
I love him.
You know,
I love him.
the trade, the trade today, and I assume you're going to talk about it,
Yeah.
is the first one that you shared that has really made me stop and be like, that's realistic, and I really like that. And I'm in a war with myself. I still don't know how I'd come down on it. So
All right, let me see. I have these trades pulled up over here if I can get my screen to work. I have these trades lined up for everyone to see if it will allow me to do so. And yes, the trade that you're talking about is for OG Anunoby. As it was reported earlier today that OG Anunoby and the Toronto Raptors may be open to potentially moving on from Anunoby. So here's the deal now, if you guys can see it. It is Rashawn Holmes and the number 4 pick for OG Anunoby, a lottery protected 2023 first round pick, and the number 33 pick in the second round this year. So I thought that was a pretty fair deal on both sides. Personally, I even think a part of me believes the Raptors get the better end of this deal, in my personal opinion. But I can't believe how many Raptors fans think that this is the worst trade they had ever seen. I think people are underestimating Rashawn Holmes, but you saw this deal. You said it was realistic. Let's say this deal goes through. Are you happy with this type of deal? Like, would you be okay with the Kings making this move?
I would celebrate this trade. I don't know that I would think the Kings got the better end of the trade, but well, first off, I've long been an OG Anunoby fan. Like he was the dude I wanted them to take at 10 in that draft when they took Fox at 5 and then they traded back from 10 to 15 and 20. I really was hoping they'd end up with him. And he's been everything I could have hoped for. And honestly, he's just such a good fit with Sabonis. Uh, Great defensive player, improving shot maker, especially in the corners. Some creation upside. He'd just be a good fit here. That contract's incredibly fair. The downside I know is that he's hasn't played 50 games in either of the last 2 years. That to me is the real hesitation. Do I think that he has as high a ceiling as any of the top 4 guys? No. So I definitely do think Toronto might be the favorite outcome in this deal, but like the fit here is just so perfect, and I'd love the outcome.
What do you say to the people that say OG Anunoby is not worth a fourth round pick? Like, I guess the real question, because Josh Eberly, who covers the NBA as well for NBA.com, like he even took it, retweeted this, and was like, what would you rather have, like OG Anunoby or the fourth pick in the draft? And for me, I think you also have to say it's OG Anunoby and a protected first for next year, because that's the only way the conversation gets started. You have to have that 2023 first round pick, in my opinion. But what would you rather have, the fourth or OG, if you're looking in terms of just talent, of what's available?
I think a lot of it comes down for Sacramento specifically. I think a lot of it comes down to who's there at 4.
Mm-hmm.
personally, I think that this is a four-player draft. Jaden Ivey absolutely should be the pick if he's the one who's still there. But if any one of Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith Jr., or Paulo Banchero is there for, I think I would rather have any one of those guys at a cost control rookie scale deal for the next 4 plus 3 years than OG. Jaden Ivey's more of a conversation because it's a real sort of fit versus ceiling outcome. He may be the best player in this draft when we're talking in a couple of years, but the fit is more complicated. Anyone who can sit there and say, I'd absolutely rather have the fourth pick than OG, I can understand where that's coming from, but it's also kind of not looking at the possibility that, these picks don't always pan out. And even if guys do pan out to a certain degree, there is no guarantee that any one of these guys does become as good as OG. Would I bet on it? No, I would definitely think that all four of those guys would be as good, probably better than OG in the long run. But OG is such a good player now and such a great fit in Sacramento, the same age as De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis, and fills a fantastic big need this team has always had. I mean, what's the last time they had a power wing with his skill set? I honestly can't think of it. So to me, anyone who says, this isn't a fair deal, well, you better be talking about health, because if you're talking about talent, I disagree.
Yeah, that's I'm in the same boat. I think if you were already thinking that Murray was your pick there, and we are going to get to draft talk as soon as we get through these trades. These other ones you're going to laugh at me anyway, so we'll get through them pretty quick. But if you were already thinking that Keegan Murray was the pick because of fit, you have to look at OG and Anunoby and say the same exact thing with actual NBA experience and defense. And the defense that he brings, I think, is being overlooked. And yeah, the health concerns, I think, are real. Obviously, playing 43 games the prior season and then 48 games this season, it is definitely concerning about the injury concerns. But I do believe that OG Anunoby has a pure talent and the upside. His age matches the timeline of this team. You have to go after a guy like that. And then again, you don't know what any of these guys are going to be at number 4, and we'll get to that here at the end of the show. So let's go ahead and move on to the next trade here that I believe you gave me a lot of crap about. I think this is where the conversation started, where you said, Vince, you're crazy, and I started getting the Michael Jordan, please stop, you need help. And it was this trade here where I said Richaun Holmes and Mo Harkless for Tim Hardaway Jr. in a second.
I don't think that's crazy. That's not the one I'm remembering that I gave you flack for. I think that's pretty fair.
You like that
If
one?
Dallas needs a center, I mean, Dallas knows they need a center. If they want Richaun Holmes, like Tim Hardaway would be a really good spot fill here, especially if the Kings don't leave this draft with a shooter in tow, with a wing in tow. So I think that one's pretty fair.
See, my thing is on this one is if you do this trade, you trade Richaun Holmes for Tim Hardaway Jr. and a second round pick, I think you draft Keegan Murray at 4. I think that's what they would go for here. And then Tim Hardaway can be your starter shooter next to Fox. And I think a lot of people say that like if you go for Tim Hardaway Jr., you're basically having Buddy Hield all over again. My counter to that is Tim Hardaway Jr. is a better overall scorer than Buddy Hield, being that he can put the ball on the floor. He's actually willing to attack the rim, unlike Buddy Hield. I think Buddy Hield was allergic to the rim. He did not like getting close to that thing at all. Obviously, he's not as good of a shooter from deep, but I just think that Tim Hardaway Jr. is a good starter, especially if Dante DiVincenzo doesn't come back. So I thought this trade made sense, but I'm pretty sure this was the one where I saw you say
I remember
crazy.
the one that I gave you flack for, and it was the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander one.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. So let's go ahead and bring up the tweet. So this was the tweet that brought. I said rumors of the Kings having a deal with OKC to move up is interesting. However, there's a feeling that I have that if a deal gets done, it won't be for the number 2 pick. It would be for SGA. Kings are in win now mode. They don't need to get younger. They need a proven talent to take them to the next level. Right? This was the one that you're talking about. And then I posted the trade. And the trade was this. The trade was Richaun Holmes, Davion Mitchell, the number 4 pick, a 2024 first round pick, and then a 2026 top 5 protected first rounder. And in return, the Kings get SGA. Obviously, you do the sign and trade for Jeremy Lamb to make the contracts work here. But yes, this would be the deal. What made this trade so crazy to you? What did you not like about this trade?
I love it for Sacramento.
Me too.
I, I absolutely love it for Sacramento. I do not believe that Oklahoma City is looking to trade Gilgeous-Alexander. I think the entire reason that they've been doing what they've been doing is to build a team around him, that he is the focal point of everything they're going to be doing moving forward, that who they're going to add at number 2 is going to be a guy that they want to build around him with. I don't think they go into this offseason looking to trade him whatsoever. I think if you set that deal to Sam Presti, he would laugh.
I
That's where I
disagree.
was coming at this one from.
I disagree,
I,
and look, let me build my case to why. And I know we talked about it on Twitter already, but for those who haven't seen it yet, again, welcome to the show, Kings Sport Podcast, sponsored by Rate Crushers. Special guest Bryant West from the Kings Herald. We're talking Kings trades and then prospects later on down the line. If you haven't done so already, hit that like button. But here's my mindset on this deal. Already, Bryant, this is it. With SGA and how this team is currently built right now, they're nowhere near getting to the play. I think they're still a step behind making the play-in behind the Kings, and the West is only going to get stronger. And OKC has proven that how they like to build their team is through the draft. They like acquiring a ton of assets to pull the trigger on something big. If you look at this trade as a whole, they get a starting center, which their starting center right now has been like Isaiah Roby or Mike Muscala at times, and I can't remember the other young guy's name. It hasn't been that great as a starting center. They get Rashawn Holmes to do that there. Perfectly good contract, tradable again, 3-year deal. They get a top 10 pick the prior year in Davion Mitchell, who has showed promise. So that's another top 10 pick that you're getting a first rounder. You're getting the number 4 pick in this draft, where they've already shown the idea of having Jaden Ivey. There's a lot of rumors floating around that Jaden Ivey is a huge person of interest for them. You also don't need to give up that number 2 pick, which could be Chet Holmgren, Paolo, Jabari, whichever one they want to move there. So they get to have the 2, the 4, Davion Mitchell, who was a top 10 pick the year prior. On top of that, they get 2 more first. 2024 first rounder and a 2026 top 5 protected first rounder. And if you're betting on the Kings to hopefully get better a little bit, that would be a pick that they no matter what get. And in return, they lose SGA, but for the Kings, they get a player that meets their timeline in terms of age, under contract for 5 years, and a backcourt of Fox and SGA, while fit-wise, it's the same conversation we're going to probably have about Ivy here in a minute, is a little questionable. I always say you have to get talent right now. You worry about fit later once the talent is acquired. I think that is box office backcourt between SGA and Fox. Did I sway you in any way? Did I make my argument?
You didn't have to sway me on the Sacramento angle of this. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would be the number 1 pick in this draft right now. I wouldn't be overly concerned about his fit with Fox. I'm just going to go back to the point you started this on, trying to sell it for OKC. OKC has been in asset collection mode in order to eventually either get such a high-end prospect that they don't have to worry about how they're rebuilding moving forward, or that they have enough picks that they can trade them for a star. Why would they keep doing that when they're trading away an asset that logically either this year or next year they'd try to be consolidating talent for anyway? Like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a guy that if he wasn't on the Thunder, they would be trading picks to go get, I think. So that's where the disconnect is here. I don't think they're that far away. I think Sacramento is in a better spot next year for them, especially if Sacramento really does something decent in the draft area. But I don't think they're that far behind. Like, this was a team, the youngest team in the NBA, and they still had a top 10 defense. You add Chet Holmgren to that rotation, you maybe make one more trade. Like, if they did their star trade this offseason, consolidated their bajillion picks and got somebody in return, I wouldn't necessarily bet against this team being in that play-in conversation. So
I would bet against
I don't think they're as far away as you do.
I do. I just don't think they have enough offense. They don't have enough offensive power. And again, the defense is solid. I mean, you got Lou Dort. SGA is really good defensively. I think Giddy is an underrated defender as well. In terms of just reading the passing lanes, he kind of has that Halliburton defense, if I'm being a little honest. But it's still defense nonetheless. He gets you those steals. I just if you're gonna draft Giddy, you're already thinking about drafting Jaden Ivey. I mean, that could be your backcourt there. Then you get Davion Mitchell. That's still your defensive presence there. You can have Chet Holmgren or Jabari Smith. I can never pronounce that guy's last name. I see the face you're making. Don't make fun of me, Brian. Don't make fun of me on the name. Or even Paolo. I think Paolo makes a lot of sense there too, even though his defense really doesn't, fit with what they're doing. But I just feel like they need to keep acquiring this young talent. I don't think that they're that close. I like Darius Baisley, but he's continued to be a project. He's still a project player. Poku's a big project player. I just Lou Dort is really good. Is he gonna develop that jump shot? He was taking jump shots this past season. He was taking them. That's the most I can say about it. So
Yeah.
I really don't know if it's really there for that next step for them to be there. So I think you get 3 first-round picks, technically 4 if you consider Davion Mitchell still to be a first-round pick since he's only going into his sophomore year, and the Kings get SGA. So for me, it makes sense on both sides. Obviously, it's just a pipe dream. Last one here that I wanted to just bring up, just because it is getting closer to draft day. This would be a draft day trade. Would you be open to this deal here, Bryant? Would you be open to the idea of trading for Kyle Kuzma, and I believe it's the number 10 pick from the Wizards, and you give up Justin Holiday, Alex Len, and the 4th pick?
I'm pretty against any sort of trade back deals. Kyle Kuzma would be good here, and 10's going to offer some level of talent, but I think that kind of trade is getting too cute. Just take one of the top 4 players and be done with it. They're on a completely different level than anybody else in this draft, in my book.
Yeah, I
And
yeah, I agree. I just don't think I personally am not the biggest Kuzma guy. Like if you're gonna get Kuzma, I'd be okay with you. If for 2 years, I'd rather go ahead and go get Jeremy Grant and the 5 from the Pistons and let them move up to 4. I
yeah,
essentially
see
view them as the exact same thing.
that one. I think it would be really hard for me to say no, but I'd probably have to say yes to that one. But there's just Jaden Ivey. Let's pretend he's there at 4. Jaden Ivey's closer to the first pick for me than he is to the 5th pick. I'm not even thinking outside the top 4. I know that the Kings will have to do the due diligence and consider Keegan Murray, Benedict Mathurin, AJ Griffin, Shaden Sharp. Just take whichever one of Chet, Jabari, Paulo, or Ivy is there.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into this draft conversation. But before I do, I want to remind everyone this show is the King's Court. We are presented by RateCrushers.com. I have Bryant West. Follow him there, BSWest5 on Twitter. He is from the King's Herald, where we just talked about all those trades. Let us know which ones you guys like down in the comment section below, or how crazy I am. You might be on Brian's side and think I'm Loki over here of the trade machine. Revoke my trade machine card for all I care, guys. I'm still using it. But let's go ahead and move over to the draft, because for me, I think at number 4, you and I are on the same mindset. Jaden Ivey, after the top 3, is the clear best player available at number 4. I know a lot of people love Shaden Sharp. They're really infatuated with the mystery that is Shaden Sharp. But I think if you're going off what we've seen with talent, the explosiveness that this guy brings, as well as the recovery that he's shown defensively. I think defensively he's not great, but he has shown that his athleticism and quickness allows him to recover better in most situations where he doesn't look horrible. I think it's clear to me he's the best player available, and I tweeted it out not that long ago. The closer we get to the draft, the more obvious that will be, and I'm glad you're starting to see it as well, or